Let's start talking about these defenders that have been linked to Real Madrid. Before we do dive into that, if you do enjoy the content of this channel, please consider subscribing as it really helps me to keep the channel growing and it motivates me to continue with daily videos. Okay, so the first defender that we're going to talk about plays for Everton in the Premier League, Jarrad Branthwaite. Now, inevitably, we know that we're short at the back. You're starting to see it. It's already happening. You're seeing things like Carvajal having to fit in at centre-back. You're seeing Tchouaméni, who's probably going to start today's game against Alaves at centre-back again. And the rotations are really starting to show. We haven't got Alaba back yet. We still don't know what level he's going to come back at. So we are being linked with all these defenders. We saw Saliba, we saw Romero, and today we've seen Branthwaite. Okay, so Branthwaite, he really rose to prominence. I want to say last season was a really big season for him. And he was very good. And it's worth remembering that he was very good in a very, very poor Everton side that almost got relegated. And Everton were shocking, absolutely shocking. However, the manager, Sean Dyche, he's come in. He's done a decent job. He's tried his best to shore up the defence, but he is still at the mercy of some players that are not up to par. They all know who they are. And it's one of those things where if you have got a player that does play well in a side that's constantly under pressure, constantly with their backs to goal, constantly having to deal with an onslaught of attackers, because let's face it, you go to the Etihad, the Emirates, Anfield, it's a tough life to live if you're an Everton fan. And he still comes out and he wins the plaudits. So he is a very good defender. And I would say that this one should be, in my eyes at least, based on the price tag. And I know that sometimes this isn't the be-all and end-all, but I would like you to remember that this summer, Branthwaite was pursued quite heavily by Manchester United. Manchester United needed centre-backs because Varane was on the way out, Martinez doesn't have the best injury record in the world, and they were a bit short. And they didn't fully rely on Lord Maguire, of course. I like Lord Maguire, by the way. I think he's incredible. Maybe not the most consistent, but I love his attitude. He always gives everything for that shirt, and I believe that you need players like that. However, they did exactly what they set out to do. They signed Lenny Yoro from right under our nose. They also signed Matthias de Ligt from Bayern Munich. So here's the thing. They signed Lenny Yoro for 50 or 60 million. They signed Matthias de Ligt for around the same fee. But the thing is that Everton were always resolute. They were demanding 70 to 75 million for Branthwaite. Is he worth it? No. There is no way that you can justify that fee. The fee alone is based on performances and future potential. But it's such a big risk in that bracket, 70 to 75 million, especially when you know that the likes of Saliba, a player who is operating for a team that's consistently challenging for the Premier League title, is in the 100 million bracket. It's really not that much more. So Manchester United recognised that they could get two players, including one who's very young with massive upside potential in Lenny Yoro, and they signed them both for a combined 100 million. Whether that will prove to be good business, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, he got a little bit unfortunate with the injury. But for me, it comes down to price tag on this one. If Everton were demanding 70 to 75 million at the time, who knows what it's going to be like next season. If he has an absolute stormer of a season this year, it could be worse. That's not to say that he wouldn't be worth it. It's just that when I look at other potential possibilities, I don't believe that if you're asking me to choose between him and Saliba or Christian Romero, that he's coming out on top. The second defender that I want to talk about is Murillo, and I've probably butchered that. So I can speak Spanish, I can speak French, but I cannot speak Portuguese. So if there are any Portuguese native speakers in the comment section, please let me know how to say that, because I've probably got that all wrong. Anyway, he is a Brazilian centre-back that plays for Nottingham Forest. And he was signed by Forest, I believe, for about 11 million, if I remember correctly. And all I would say on this one is he impresses me. He plays very well in the Premier League, and Nottingham Forest are quietly going about their business. Nuno Espirito Santo is doing an incredible job with that team. He's made them very compact at the back, but they are also a threat. And the result that they managed last weekend at Anfield was incredible. It really was. They haven't won at Anfield since the 60s. And the performance that they gave is very, very typical of what they do. They have a very, very defined game plan. They keep things tight, but they're also quite daring in what they do, and that's why they were able to come away with the result. What kind of defender is Murillo? He's very combative. He's got a bit of a trick in him as well, which can sometimes be a little bit concerning, to be honest. There's far too many times that I've seen him try to put the ball through someone's legs. I've seen him put it through Salah's legs a few times, and it's quite concerning because you get those wrong and you look absolutely ridiculous. But he's got a little bit of that Brazilian flair about him. So it's quite exciting. I don't think you can take that away from him, unless Carlo has a go at him, obviously, or Rudiger. But I do believe that he has got something to him. He's got a lot of physical presence. Reminds me a little bit of Diego Carlos at Aston Villa. He's quite a big frame. He's very happy going in one-on-one with attackers, which is what you want, really. And if we're talking about the price tag, I know that Nottingham Forest are not going to sell him to us for 11 million. Never going to happen in a million years. But by the same token, he might be more attainable than the alternatives. So he's one that's worth considering. He's still not in that top two bracket for me. I still think you've got Romero and Saliba, who are my personal favourites to take that position. Another topic that I wanted to touch on today was the injury to Rodri. So you might have heard that, unfortunately, Manchester City's Rodri sustained an injury, and it's a bad one. It's an ACL. He's out for the season, reportedly. Now, this is bad for the player. It's bad for the league because arguably he is one of the best players in the world. And he is one of the favourites for the Ballon d'Or. He still will be. Of course he will. And it is a massive loss for Man City. Now, this is not our position to gloat because, we'll play a weakened City side at some point in the Champions League. No, it's horrible for a couple of different reasons. Number one, for him, his reaction was devastating. He was effectively praying on the pitch because he realised instantly, players always do. They know when it's serious. They know when there's the potential that things are looking really, really bad. And the thing is that we've seen this before. Look at Eden Hazard. He was a player who never got injured in his time at Chelsea. He had the odd knock here and there, but for the most part, he's kept himself fit and he was absolutely fine. Came to Madrid and he had that horrific injury against Paris, and he was never the same. He didn't want to fly into challenges. He didn't want to attack players one-on-one because he didn't want a reoccurrence. He didn't want a relapse. And it's understandable. This happens in football quite a lot, and there are loads of stories of it. And it is quite sad because Rodri is a phenomenal player. He's one of these players that you can effectively trust to do the job of what normally two players would do in most sides, and he does it completely fine all by himself. He's a luxury footballer to have in that regard, and his attitude, according to everyone around the clubs that he's played at, is second to none. He's very humble, very modest, goes about his job. He's the dream footballer to have. Everyone should have a player like that on their side. And obviously, he's been linked to Madrid quite heavily in recent times. And they were talking about a move for him next summer. And now that's up in the air. And it is. That's the sad truth of it, because you don't know when he's going to come back from his injury. You don't know if he's going to be the same player after his injury. Some players don't respond very well afterwards. Some players are never the same. You don't know. It's a horrible, horrible thing that's happened. And it's no one's fault. These things just happen. But yeah, I suppose on that one, it's not the right time to talk about a future move for Rodri. I don't think you can at this stage. I think it's a case of we all hope that he gets better, because at the end of the day, we're all football fans. We like watching good football, and he's one of the best. It is an education to watch him play, whether it be for City or whether it be for Spain, and he's a huge loss. We are a worse sport without him in it. So yeah, hopefully he gets better soon. The final thing that I wanted to touch on was tonight's game. Okay, so apparently there are more changes. Apparently Dani Carvajal, for example, is still not fit to play, so I'm expecting Vasquez to come in at right back, which is fine. I like him. He's got a fantastic attitude. Apparently, Mondi will be back at left back. I'm a little bit less excited about this one. I really enjoyed the way that Fran Garcia went after Sociedad in the last game. He was immense, especially that shot. Wow, reminds me of what he used to do by Yagano. So, yeah, that's a bit of a loss. But if things are going badly, you might see him in the second half. The other interesting change is that apparently Mbappe will be rotated and he won't be starting the game, which is interesting because we've got a massive game on the weekend, obviously. But it also means that there is potential for Endrick to start the game. And I thought that Endrick played really well in the minutes that he did get on the weekend. And the strength that he showed to win the penalty was absolutely outrageous. This is a player who is effectively starved of minutes, a little bit like Arda was last season. But the thing that Endrick's got going for him is that there's no one in front of him besides Mbappe for that spot in the team. As Hosselu is gone, there's no one gatekeeping his path to the first team, and it would be interesting to see him get some minutes under his belt. Now, from what I've been reading from the press conferences, I gathered that they're going to go with the double pivot again, so I'm expecting to see Valverde alongside Luka Modric in the double pivot, which I thought worked extremely well on the weekend. I think Luka Modric is perfectly suited to playing the ball and keeping things ticking over. His passing is second to none and he rarely gives it away. Valverde effectively does the job of 17 million players. He's everywhere. He's absolutely everywhere. I just really hope, and I don't want to jinx anything, I just really hope that we don't run him into the ground because it could happen. He is doing so much right now. I'm expecting to see Tchouaméni at centre-back. I think that that's a fairly obvious rotation, which will happen. And it worked well on the weekend, allowed Rudiger to get some much-needed rest. He'll probably come back into the side. And I'm expecting Rodrigo and Vinicius up front alongside Endrick. It will be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, there is temptation with games like this to have one eye on the weekend game, which is a huge one, as you know. But I do think that you have got to approach every single game like a final. And it sounds ridiculous to say in September, but from the way that Barcelona are ripping this league to pieces, it could be over before we know it. And that sounds quite dramatic, but I can't see them dropping points. I feel like we'll be the ones to try and take something off them, but it's more the fact that I don't have much faith in the rest of the league to deal with them. What they did to Villarreal on the weekend was frightening. So we do have to be quite conscious of that. We do have to make sure that we are winning our games. And I do think that we do have a bit of a sense of inevitability at this point. Like on the weekend, even though we hadn't scored in the first half and you had players like Bellingham looking a little bit frustrated, the chances were there. The chances were being created, which was really, really positive to see. So although Mbappe wasn't the free-flowing scoring striker that we want him to be, he was getting the opportunities, which shows, number one, he's in the right place to take advantage, and number two, the chances are being created for him. So it does bode well, and I do think we will get opportunities tonight. And it would be interesting to see just how Endrick takes control if he does get that opportunity. I'm also hoping that Arda will get some more minutes because although he didn't have his best game at the weekend, he needs the minutes. He's clearly rusty. He's clearly not part of that first team, and he does need to integrate a little bit more, and that's only going to come with minutes on the pitch. So hopefully we do see a little bit more of that. Anyway, I am going to end it there because we've covered quite a lot today. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. And if you did enjoy the content, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Take care.